Maria and Megha are back in the webinar. Excellent. Just checking everybody's back.
Yep, I'm back.
Great. Thank you. Excellent. Well, so we'll be starting in roughly a minute or so when Mark gives me the go ahead.
Hey guys, we'll start will accept the attendees.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everyone. So thank you very much for joining us at the Road Safety Capacity Building Program. Before I say too much, as usual, maybe Mark, if we can bring up the next slide. I just want to remind our participants that if you do need Russian interpretation, you can enable that at the bottom of your Zoom screen now and click Russian, and our very helpful interpreters will be able to translate our presentations from English to Russian for you. Thank you. Excellent. Fantastic. Welcome again, everyone. Hi, my name is Jessica Trung, and I am from Lösninger, an organisation specialising in Vision Zero planning. So once again, a very big welcome to the Road Safety Capacity Building Program. This is the webinar series 2. If you joined us for the first one, that was focusing on data. This second edition is focusing on safe and sustainable transport. And we're very grateful that this program has been brought to you by the Asia Pacific Road Safety Observatory and the Central Asia Regional Economic Cooperation CAREC program and the Asian Development Bank. The grant funding for this webinar series has been received from the Japan Fund for Prosperous and Resilient Asia and the Pacific, financed by the Government of Japan through the Asian Development Bank. So we're very happy today to be sharing the second session of this second edition of the webinar series. And I apologize in advance, I have a bit of a cold, so if I sound a little bit funny, if you can please excuse that, I would be very grateful. So as you can see, maybe we'll go back one slide, Mark. We have this second session, which will be focusing on last mile connectivity and e-mobility. And we have a great lineup of speakers, including Megha Singh from Uber, Maria Ritzi from Stranded Inc., and also Kim Lua from Global Designing Cities Initiative. So as usual, you'll be able to hear from each of our expert presenters, and then we'll move into a question and answer session. And as you understand, if we move to the next slide, please, Mark, that this is one of 5 sessions that will be running as a part of this second edition of the webinar series. After this session, every 2 weeks on the Tuesday, we'll be running another webinar focusing on a different aspect of safe and sustainable transport. So you can sort of see on the agenda there, and we hope that you'll be able to join us for every one of them. So please do mark it in your calendars and come back in 2 weeks' time for the third session. So if we move to the next slide, please, Mark. So before we jump into the presentations, just some housekeeping very quickly again. Your mics will be muted unless we invite you to speak. And we do want this to be an interactive session between the speakers and the participants. So at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a Q&A button. Feel free to go in there, ask any questions that you have for our speakers, or even just to interact with each other. And if you have the answers to any of the questions that are being asked, please do feel free to put your answers in there as well. And I also encourage the speakers to check out the Q&A box at the conclusion of your presentation and answer any questions that might have been posed to you directly. And then, of course, during the question and answer session at the end, we invite you to either put your questions into the Q&A box or raise your hand and ask the question directly to our speakers. With that, we're going to get on with our webinar, and I'd like to invite our very first speaker, Mega Singh from Uber, to share her presentation and talk a little bit about the innovations in last mile connectivity. Fantastic. Welcome, Mega. Thanks for joining us. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jessica. Right where we begin, I'd just like to take a moment to also thank the organizers for hosting this really thoughtful session. And of course, again, to Jessica for all of the coordination that she's done over the last couple of weeks for setting this up. So I'm also very grateful for the opportunity to be sharing with you about a bit about Uber and the impact it is having around the world, especially with regards to first and last mile connectivity in urban centers across the world. Of course, Uber's mission has been to create opportunity through movement. We started in 2010 to solve a very simple problem. How do you get access to a ride at the touch of a button? More than 34 billion trips later, we are building products to get people closer to where they need to be. And we're also changing how people, food, and things move across cities. We believe that Uber is a platform that opens up the world to new possibilities. Could we move to the next slide? If you've used the Uber apps before, you'll know that Uber is a tech company that connects the physical and the digital worlds to help make movement happen at the tap of a button. We want to help people go anywhere and get anything they need. Our technology helps us develop and maintain a multi-sided platform that matches consumers looking for rides with independent providers of transportation services, as well as other forms of transportation like public transit, bikes, scooters. On the left side of your screen, you will be able to see the Uber Rides app, which has all of the various options that we have to get across from place to place. And we also connect consumers with restaurant, grocers, and other merchants so that they can buy and sell meals, groceries, and other items. And again, we match them with independent delivery service providers. And on the right side there, you can see the Uber Eats app. Could we move to the next slide? Here we are basically talking about how Uber is currently the world's largest mobility platform. We are active in approximately 70 countries with over 15,000 cities as of February 2025. On the right side, you will also see a range of transportation options that are available through the Uber app, depending on the country or city you are in. This is the power of the platform, as we like to call it, to serve riders with different needs and means with the transportation option that works for them. So there would be something super premium like an Uber Black to something which would be super accessible and super affordable like an Uber Moto or an Uber Auto, and even options of Uber Transit, which would help you journey plan on how you can use the Uber app to connect to public transportation as well. Could we move to the next slide, please? As here we are going, as we're going to be speaking about last mile connectivity more in this session, something that I'd really like to draw your focus on is a product category that we refer to as hailables. So hailables are a big aspect for first and last mile connectivity, for the first and last mile connectivity potential, which Uber presents to all its users. So what we, as a global platform where we operate in highly varied contexts, reflecting local travel cultures and preferences, means offering people with more ways to move. So to that end, we in different cities, we connect riders to locally familiar modes of transportation, including yellow taxis, auto rickshaws, tuk-tuks, and motorcycle taxis, so that people can have access to the most affordable and convenient mode of transportation. While these modes are traditionally hailed on the streets, we can make them easier to find and safer to ride by putting them on the Uber app. These modes can then be used to get to and from public transportation stations. So, in India, for example, we have seen that over 25% of rides for Uber Moto, which is our two-wheeler product, as you can see on the left side of the screen, are to and from a metro station. So people use this product in order to get to the metro station and to get again like from the metro station to where their final destination would be. And this really reflects the first and last mile potential that the product has. Could we move to the next slide, please? So we come to the question of why hailables are important. So firstly, there are various aspects to it. There's of course the aspect of why it is important to drivers, why it is important to riders, and then why is it important for the governments across the world. So when we use modes of transportation which are available, which are already available on the streets and make them accessible through the apps, we are trying to deliver value to all three stakeholders. For drivers, this availability of hailables on the Uber app can increase earnings by offering additional trip requests. This is especially important for periods where there is low demand. There are various times of the day, for example, an afternoon or an early morning, where drivers may not have access to, may not have a lot of demand on the streets because people are not really moving on the streets at that point of time. However, some people may still want to go door to door, and it's in those lean periods where demand is low, passengers can access the Uber app and try to get rides booked, and that provides the drivers with an additional um, demand generation service. Of course, there's also always the aspect of transparency through upfront fares and also access to the various safety features, which I will be getting into a little bit later in the presentation for at all times, which means that anything that might like any aspect around safety which might not have been taken care of right at the streets can then be done through the app. For riders, it also means that they always have a more reliable and convenient service for street hail. Especially in various countries across the Asia Pacific, we see that we need to get into a little bit of a bargaining, especially in India with the modes on the street, for example, auto rickshaws. However, we once the products are available on the app, you have a more reliable and convenient option where you're always getting the fares up front like a normal Uber cab, and you're able to get the moto or the auto at a price point that works for you. And of course, goes without saying that the safety features of the service continue to be available to riders as well. And when we come to we think that the governments will see value through greater access to transportation for their citizens, especially in the historically underserved areas, as well as the expanded and formalized earning opportunities for drivers. So essentially, if there were places which could not have been reached earlier through public transit options, the options of getting last and first mile connectivity through hailables ensures that even people in underserved areas would be able to get access to rides at again, which is reliable as well as affordable. And for the gig workers themselves or for the independent transportation providers, this also expands their earning opportunity and ensures that they have a more formalized way of access to income as well. So these would largely be the benefits of first and last mile connectivity through hailables. Could we move to the next slide, please? Here we do a little bit of like a deeper dive on where you could find and where you could use the Uber app to get a hailable. Our global hailables footprint is growing. In addition to onboarding individual taxi drivers to the platform, we've also formed several partnerships with major taxi operators, meaning we can refer more trips to more taxi drivers across the world, or more auto rickshaw drivers across the world, or more bike taxi drivers across the world as well. We're also increasing the number of bike taxi drivers, particularly in Asia Pacific as well as Latin America, which all have like a deeply embedded culture of using two-wheelers for transportation. Next slide, please.
Mega, just a couple of minutes left.
Sure. So just in the interest of time, I'll just be a little bit quicker about this one, where we also have, it's just an example of how we have had first and last mile connectivity partnerships with in UK and Europe as well as in the US, and how we are trying to now build these partnerships in Asia Pacific and in India as well. So I think we can move to the next one. Actually, it'll be more India specific. Yes. So just to give you an idea about the scale and to like dive closer to home in APAC, we'd like to take a deeper look of how Uber helps India move. There are various products that are available for all price points, again, helping ensure that people have last mile connectivity options available, such as Uber Auto and Uber Moto, which are again India first products. These were first developed in India. And there are also other services which we are trying to come up with, such as the shuttle service. And we are in conversations with various governments in India to try and build out a feeder service, which is basically which will be smaller shuttles, which can help gather a lot of people in communities, in neighborhoods, and drive them to the metro stations. Could we move to the next slide? When we talk to get into the very specifics of what first and last mile connectivity in partnership with the metro station looks like, we basically see that this will be an experience that you would possibly see at airports across the world, where you have like a designated pickup and drop off zone to ensure that there is no congestion that happens at the various gates that the metro stations may have. And there is a dedicated parking and pickup area for drivers, as well as special special incentives, safety kits for motorcycle drivers. And from the rider end, what you see is that there would not be any haggling, there would not be any bargaining, there would be, of course, upfront fares that would be booked, that would be decided in advance to booking the trip, and of course, a safer ride. So this ensures that when we partner with metro stations, which we are doing in a few cities in India, we are able to ensure a great service for both riders as well as drivers. Could we move to the next slide? This is a quick look of what the app would look like when you would want to book a last mile or a first mile ride for a metro station. You would get a preferred fare, you would get exactly where you would want to get dropped off, which would be decided in partnership with the metro station, as well as the traffic authorities in the city to avoid congestion. And this would make the experience simpler for both passengers as well as drivers. Could we move to the next one? We're now looking at the cities that we are about to go live in India. We're partnering with the Mumbai Metro, where we will be offering special fares for trips starting from metro stations, ensuring that people have, again, like an even more affordable option to get to and from places. There would also be designated pickup and drop-offs for autos and bikes, and a special product view so that people know exactly which one to pick up when they want to get to the metro. We've also had previous partnerships like the one with the Chennai Metro, which was geared towards improving first and last mile connectivity with designated pickup and drop-offs, as well as parking areas for autos, so that they had adequate space without adding to congestion on the roads. In addition to these cities, we are also in active conversations with many others, especially the Delhi Metro, which is which is the largest metro service in India with a massive everyday passenger quantity. If we can move to the next slide. We also believe in building safety into every trip. So I'll just take a quick look into the various ways in which we ensure safety. For example, there are three sections. One would be before the trip, the second would be during the trip, and the third would be post the trip. Before the trip even starts, we ensure that all drivers have a background and ID verification. Apart from that, we also do randomized real-time ID checks using our various AI tools, which do two things. First would be checking if the driver is the same as the one that has been designated to a passenger, as well as to check on other things such as whether the driver is wearing a helmet or not in case it is a bike taxi ride. There are various training and gender sensitization programs which have been taken up, as well as other fraud proofing initiatives. For example, in many cities in Asia Pacific, we are able to every rider has a pin on their app which they need to share with the driver in order to start the trip, ensuring that there is no mismatch that happens. On trip, in most countries, we have insurance available. As everyone would know, these are all GPS tracked as well as shareable. We also have a new technology called Ride Check, where if your trip has moved away from the original route, which was pre-planned, the Uber app sends you a reminder or a notification to check whether everything is okay. This is also triggered if your vehicle has been stationary for a long period. This is the safety line is something which is specific to India, where we are also partnering with police authorities to have real-time SOS integration, that in case of any emergencies, people could reach out as soon as possible, and this would directly connect them with the police authorities. Post-trip, as you would know, there are two-way rating systems as well as feedback. And we also, in case we see that there have been overspeeding related feedback that we've received, we try to communicate that with the driver and also educate them on the risks of overspeeding as well as rash driving. Sorry, I'll just quickly wrap up then. I think I could conclude there. Like the next slide is, of course, on the fact that we do believe that the future is where movement is possible, no matter where anybody lives, and we'd like to make places and cities more sustainable and inclusive. So thank you. Sorry if I shot over time, Jessica, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mega, for sharing with us what Uber is doing in the first and last mile connectivity. I think I've been a very late adopter to Uber, and I didn't realize there's been so much development in different areas that Uber's sort of expanded into to make that last mile connectivity easier for a lot of our road users. So maybe we'll have an opportunity during the question and answer session to delve into that a little bit more. I certainly know I've got a couple of questions, and I know maybe our participants might as well. So before I move to our next speaker, Mark, if we can bring up the very first poll question, I thought it would be interesting to find out from our participants, how do people in your country usually get to their end destination? Do they use a car, a motorcycle, e-scooters, or a combination of the above? So while I introduce our next speaker, if you can kindly fill in that poll, that would be much appreciated. So as many of you are aware, in recent times, there has been a great increase in the number of e-bikes and e-scooters and e-mobility in many of our countries. And there are often a lot of safety considerations and discussions around that. And we're very pleased that we have Maria Rizzi from Stranded Inc. joining us today to help us understand what are some of the safety considerations that needs to be thought about if we are to include these modes of transport on our roads. Welcome, Maria, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Jessica. I'll quickly start to share my presentation. All right, so that looks good to everyone.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. So thank you very much for having me as part of this session on e-mobility. I wanted to share some of my experience considering these safety aspects mentioned by Jess that related to e-mobility. And for my session, I will focus on e-scooters, bicycles, e-bikes, and how they can be interacted from a safe system perspective. And the background for what I'm going to be sharing today is a report we did for an Australian jurisdiction where we developed a framework for increased safety for these road users that aligns with a safe system approach. So the topics I will cover shortly today is micromobility or e-mobility in a safe system, and present the framework that we developed, and also exemplify how this can be used in policy and planning. So one important pre-assumption in a safe system perspective is that the human will make errors and that crashes will occur, but the consequences of a crash should not result in death or serious injury. And the safety level of a road transport system is given by the interaction of the speed, the road, the vehicle, and the road user. And these components need to interact in a way that will protect the road user from fatal and serious injury in case of a crash. Now, for vulnerable road users, as the riders of e-scooters and cyclists, there is less protection in case of a crash compared to, for example, with car occupants, where you have things such as crumble zones, advanced braking technology, seat belts, airbags. So this means that even at lower speeds, vulnerable road users are at risk of serious injury given a crash or even given a fall. And considering that crashes very easily happen, one cannot eliminate all crashes, but we need to consider how we can best protect this category of road users. And to do that, we can actually draw inspiration from a model for safe road traffic that has been developed for passenger cars. And we can draw that inspiration to see what type of criteria should we use as a best practice when it comes to cyclists and e-scooter riders, both in terms of the single vehicle crashes that are the biggest crash type when you look at this road user, and also in collisions with motor vehicles that are usually a bit more hazardous. So bear in mind that this figure contains a lot of information, but I'll talk you through it. And this figure is really summary of the framework that we developed. As a background, I can mention that the framework is based on literature review, for example, in relation to the speeds we have looked at, studies modeling the speed in relation to the speed of the motor vehicles in relation to injuries among cyclists and pedestrians. I have provided as a part of the presentation selected literature in a separate slide. I can also mention that the model is a further development of the model for safe road traffic that was developed in Sweden. And the basis of this model, at the bottom you see we have the human tolerance to external forces, as well as the human's mental and physical limitations. That really is the basis that you combine with these characteristics of the road user, of the road and the vehicle, to ultimately define what are safe speed limits or what are safe speeds if we want to create safer road transport system for these road users. So we have, in relation to the road user, we say that a rider of e-scooter or a bicycle rider wears a helmet. The rider is sober and follows speed limits and use designated infrastructure. In relation to the road, we want to say that in first hand, we want to separate these road users from motor vehicles when we have speeds that are above 30 kilometers per hour. It's also important that we separate from pedestrians where it's possible. We see that we need a high quality maintenance of the road surface and the road environment that is particularly of importance for these road users. And when it comes to intersections, we want to make sure that when interaction with motor vehicles occur, we do not have speeds exceeding 20 kilometers per hour. It's also important to consider the design of the infrastructure to really cater for the needs of these vehicles and keep their function in mind. For example, the smaller wheels of an e-scooter might have some trouble getting on or off a high curb, for example. And you really also need to consider that you have appropriate road width, which means that you have enough space to accommodate for different road users. In relation to the vehicle themselves, the bicycles and the e-scooters are unstable in their in their core, and you need to really consider how we can best compensate for that. For example, we can use we make sure that they have appropriate or well-functioning brakes. We can limit the speed of the vehicles in certain areas or during certain times. For the motor vehicles interacting with these road users, we want the vehicles to have an autonomous emergency braking system that can detect them. We want also to be able to control the speed of these vehicles in areas where they interact. And we want vehicles to consider the crash worthiness in terms of how the crash will impact the vulnerable road user. And all these components aligned, we can then start looking at what are safer speeds if we try to accommodate for these different areas. And we can say that we want to have a maximum of 20 kilometers per hour for the motor vehicles at intersections where you don't have any traffic calming. And we want to say that the speed should not exceed 30 kilometers per hour on mid-blocks when you have a mix of pedestrians and e-scooters and motor vehicles. And you also need to consider the speed of the bicycle or the e-scooter itself, that it should not exceed 15 kilometers per hour when you're mixed with the motor vehicles. And when you have shared paths that you have mixed with pedestrians, it should be aligned with a pedestrian speed, a maximum of 6 to 7 kilometers per hour, to not to create unsafety for the pedestrians. And yeah, depending on the design of the shared paths, it could be the 15 kilometers per hour or even 20 kilometers per hour if it's completely separated from both motor vehicles and pedestrians. So having had a quick look at this framework and what type of considerations that you can need to do in different areas, you will want some guidance as to where in the transport system these adjustments need to be implemented. And to answer that, you could define the transport needs that should be met across the road network. And for the purpose of that, you can use a framework such as the movement and place framework that can be used to classify the road network by movement that refers to traffic volumes, or place that refers to population and land use. So depending on the priority of that road or that area, what type of infrastructure and speed requirements should be used to align with the safe system. So for example, if you have the high movement and low place environment, which would be your typical main roads, such as motorways or highways, here we cannot allow for vulnerable road users to mix with vehicles. They should be separated, and also the road should be equipped with the median barrier, which such a design would allow for higher speeds for motor vehicles. while you can have example of other areas, such as local streets or civic spaces, that's more accommodating for vulnerable road users. This would mean that you might want to allow e-scooters or e-bikes to travel on the road mixed with the cars, and that means that you have to align the speed of the motor vehicles so it doesn't exceed 30 kilometers per hour, for example. So you really need to consider how you need to align the speed and the infrastructure to cater for this type of mobility. And that would mean, for example, considering what are the appropriate speeds and where should the adjustments be made. You need to make special considerations in the road infrastructure. For example, considering the high curbs, that's not easy for a scooter to cross, for example. And you need to consider the road surface condition and different materials. So really to wrap up, my key messages are that, yes, you need to consider where in the transport system you should plan for these road users, and you should use appropriate speed limits that align with safe system, and separate from both motor vehicles and pedestrians where possible or necessary. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Maria. And that's a very comprehensive framework for cities and countries that do want to allow for e-scooters in their cities on how to keep them safe. And I note under the Safer Road section, you do have a list of requirements that cities can consider putting in place for their roads and design to keep e-scooter riders safe. And I think that's a great segue into our next speaker, Kim Liu from the Global Designing Cities Initiative, to talk a little bit about how can we design our streets to facilitate safer last mile connectivity, including the use of e-scooters. So Kim, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen at the moment?
Not your presentation at the moment.
Okay, let me do it.
Yes, we can see your presentation. Just need to
Okay.
put that into presenter mode.
Okay. Can you
Perfect.
see that as a presenter mode? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Hi everyone, my name is Kim Liu. I'm from Global Designing City Initiative, GDCI. GDCI is a nonprofit organization, and we are working in over 60 cities in 30 countries. And our mission is to use our global experience to inspire leaders, inform practitioners, and empower communities to transform streets. And we develop guidebooks based on our international experience. And our work is guided by Global Street Design Guide, which is it was endorsed by over 100 countries, cities, and organizations. And our guidebook are available for download and have been translated into different languages. And we hope that our guidebook can help you to transform the street to put people first. So before we get into specific last mile connectivity issues, I want to talk about the untapped potential for our street. And in every city where GDCI has worked, over 60 cities in 36 countries, one fact stands out. Streets make up the largest form of continuous public space in urban area. And we might use this valuable space better and more efficiently to create more sustainable and livable environment. And street is for people. People don't just use the street to drive. They use them to play, to socialize, and move around using different kind of transportation modes, walking, cycling, scootering, or get to public transportations, or taking public transportation from there. Street are where the city life happens. Yet majority of the transportation infrastructure projects focus only on building a corridor for vehicles and miss this opportunity to rethink how street can be reorganized. Giving the street present the greatest opportunity for city to address multiple challenges, whether it's road safety, last mile connectivity, air quality, the lack of public space, or even absence of places for people to get together. Our street can be the solutions. The good news is we know how we can take this challenge, and we just need to rethink how we can reorganize our street differently. Instead of using them as a primary function to move vehicles, we need to redesign them for all people. So to make this work, we need to rethink our street entirely. Right now, many of the streets are designed for vehicle as the priority. But if we want to put people first, we need to transform streets to prioritize walking and cycling, which are crucial for last mile connectivities. Imagine wider streets, protected bicycle lanes, and safe crossings. This actually what Maria mentioned before. We need to allocate appropriate space for all road users. These are the kind of changes that make people feel welcome and when they travel to public transportation stations as well. As the heart of all this is one really simple idea. Streets should be designed for people and then not just for car. And when we organize the street with people in mind, we create space that are not only for car, but also for the people to enjoy and for people to access to public transportation system, recreations, and other opportunities as well. And we should design the street for all people of all ages, ability, cultures, and social economy backgrounds. This should not only focusing on create space for individual, also fostering a sense of community and social interaction amongst family, friends, and stranger. By reallocating the space, reducing the width of the road, for example, we can create plaza, mini parks, and wider sidewalks and bicycle lanes. We can create space where people want to be, not just a place for them to pass through. And this can help people reimagine their city as a vital public space to celebrate, to play, to shop, to interact, and lead to a healthier lifestyle based on the mobility choices they are provided with. So when we invest in public transportation infrastructure, we should use the chain to arrange our streets. This means redesigning the route bed and reorganize public space to make room for bicycle lanes, pedestrian walkway, plaza, even mini parks that improve last mile connectivity. And imagine street where pedestrians can walk safely, cyclists have dedicated lanes, and there are small plaza and parks where people can get together. And people can access to public transportation safely and conveniently. This style of transformation not only make the city more livable, but also directly improve last mile connectivity. And when we invest in public infrastructure, whether it is bus, rapid transit, metro station, or light rails, this is often the opportunity to redesign how we use our street. A lot of times, this is the last mile connectivity is overlooked, and street remain car-dominated space. So to fully capitalize the investment, we must view the project not just as a transportation corridor, but as trying to rethink and reorganize street as a public space. The roadway itself is actually often take up more space than is needed, leaving little room for pedestrians and cyclists. By reducing the width or length and remove the extra lanes, we can create more room for other users and move even more people. This free out space can be repurposed for protected bicycle lanes, wider sidewalk, or any other public spaces. Street with extra space, such as overly wide lanes or underused parking, are perfect candidates for this style of transformation. So, street is where the last mile connection happens. Last mile connection is critical when it comes to public transportation development. It is something that often get overlooked, but can make all the difference in the success of a public transportation project. We have since impressed project building like major public transportation infrastructure. But one common issues persist is how people actually get to the stations. The final stretch, the last mile connection, especially when you come to cycling and for pedestrians. And for public transportation system to be successful, we must make sure that last mile connections is part of the planning and constructions from the start. And this is not just about convenience. So this is one example in India. On top of this is a state-of-the-art metro stations. But in the planning and construction process, they didn't include any last mile connections. They didn't consider into the planning and construction. There's no sidewalks, there's no adequate sidewalk, there's no safe crossing pedestrians, there's no bicycle lane here. So last mile connectivity, not just for convenience, is about transforming how we think about streets and urban mobility. It's about putting people first and creating a network of mobility choices for them to choose from all through their journey from start to end. Transforming the streets is a multi-modal space is a great transforming the street into a multi-modal space is a great way to provide last mile connectivity. It's a trend to redesign our street to provide walking and cycling facilities. When you think about it, streets are not just for cars, they are for people. And we have to start transforming the streets that the way that put people first is about transforming the street, how we think about how the urban mobility should function, how people move. It's about putting people first and creating a network of mobility choices for them to choose. But this is important part, safety. People will not walk or bike to public transportation stations if they are not safe. And last mile connection must be safe, convenient, and direct. If we want to encourage people to use public transportation system, we have to make sure that the pathway leading to these stations are safe and secure. Public transportation should be accessible for everyone, regardless on how they travel to and from a station. Planning for last mile connections mean designing streets and infrastructure that accommodate for all users, whether they are walking, cycling, using shared mobility, scootering, or even using mobility aids like wheelchair. And the street should be designed to improve lateral connectivity that could reduce travel distance, create more transportation options for the people, and enhance the comfort and efficiency of the trip. To make this work, we need to rethink our street entirely. Currently, many of our streets are designed with cars as priority. But if we want to put people first, we need to transform street to prioritize walking and cycling. Imagine like the great wider sidewalks, protected bicycle lane, and safe crossing for all road users. And these are the kind of changes that make people feel welcome and safe when they travel to those last mile to a station. And it is difficult or time-consuming for people to get to a station. They are likely to use other options to travel, such as driving, which we don't want that to happen. The last mile connections must be direct, convenient, and easy and safe to navigate. For example, redesigning the street to include like safe, secure sidewalk, bicycle lane, clear signage, and wheelchair accessible, and also friendly to other people with other impairments. And those are the facility that can help to ensure to improve the public transportation systems, increase the ridership as well. Given this, and we must start rethinking like putting this into a planning and construction process in developing a public transportation system. And many of the public transportation users are not just travel from point A to point B. They're actually making many small stops when they're making the trips. For example, a caretaker might travel with the children, with the children to a public transportation station and take the bus to school. And after dropping off the children, the caretaker might use a shared bicycle to reach the public transportation station to get to office. The last mile connections should include all modes so that people can seamlessly select the mode that fit their travel needs. The key point is that streets should be designed for people. When we reorganize street with people in mind, we create space that are not only more enjoyable, but also more accessible and equitable for all people. So when we look ahead at the future of our city, let us not miss this opportunity to transform our streets. Streets are the largest network of public space, and by designing them with people in mind, we can take a variety of urban tackle a variety of urban challenges at once, whether it is improving road safety, reducing pollution, or simply giving people more space to play, socialize, or celebrate. So if we rethink our street, we can make our city safer, more vibrant, and more inclusive for everyone. And in addition, it is also a great way for us to start thinking about how the design standards in the city should be modified to include all these changes. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Kim. A very comprehensive look as what our streets would need to look like if we are to be inclusive of all road users. We're going to start our Q&A session now. So I do encourage you, if you have any questions, do pop them into the question and answer box and I will ask that of the speakers. Can I please invite Maria and Mega to come back and join us? And while they're doing that, Mark, can I please ask you to bring up the results of the very first poll? If you remember earlier in the session, we asked a poll question regarding what are the most common ways that people in your country get to their final destination. And from the results, we can see that there isn't one particular mode of transport that is the most popular, and most people use a combination of the above. And e-bikes and e-scooters and cycling seems to be at the very low end, which I guess sort of highlights that perhaps people are not feeling so safe or that there aren't enough facilities to ensure that people can use that as a frequent mode of transport to get to their end destination. So that gives us a lot of food for thought. So I've got a couple of questions that I would also like to ask of the speakers, and maybe I'll start with you, Mega, and if we can just ask the speakers to keep them the answer within 30 seconds or so, just so we can ask a few more questions. Mega, I think in your presentation, you touched on pre, on, and post-trip safety for your users, and I think that touches on a lot of personal security types of safety issue. What about road safety and safety in terms of, like keeping people safe on the roads, not just personal security? What is Uber doing about that?
So again, I would say that there are pre-trip, on-trip, and post-trip measures for that as well. So firstly, when we talk about pre-trip, we do have a few partnerships with various road safety NGOs as well as educational institutions to help develop modules which are easy to access and easy to remember for all drivers. And we ensure that this is sent periodically through the Uber app as an education means. So I would not call this a training, while this is part of the general onboarding training as well. These are general reminders which keep going back to the drivers, especially when it comes to motorcycles, which are traditionally more unsafe as a means just because of the vehicular form. These reminders, these nudges do go off very often. The helmet Mutombo feature is another major aspect for road safety on motorcycles, which is basically prior to a trip starting, a driver would have to take a selfie, and the app using AI sees whether they are wearing a helmet or not. And if they are not wearing a helmet, they cannot go online. in addition to that, we also have speeding alerts which come up, which is of course based off of Google Maps, but that's a dependency there. However, speeding alerts happen on trips and those happen in real time, so that becomes an on-trip aspect of road safety. And then we come to the post-trip where users would always have the option to share feedback about reckless driving. And we ensure that in case there are multiple incidents coming up for any particular earner, we do run a specialized, more concrete training program for them for road safety. So those would be the broader buckets around road safety.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Mega. Maybe we will move to Maria. That was a really great presentation, sort of highlighting what our cities would need to look like in order to be able to safely accommodate e-mobility. So in your experience and in your research, is e-mobility making up a large part of the road trauma in many cities?
Yes, and it depends on what type of data you look at, because if you have access to hospital data, then we will notice that you have a big increase in the number of vulnerable road users, and especially I would say bicyclists, depending on the type of road users that are present in your area. But and yes, and for example, around the e-scooters, that's something that's kind of popped up recently or over the last 10 years or so across cities. And that's something that has been highlighted a lot in that type of data, and something that also has been sort of dealt with or regulated in some ways. I know that there was a question before around possible licensing of this type of vehicles. And in relation to that, I would say that it's not something that we still want to encourage people to use this type of transportation. So that's maybe not the right way to go, but you can still, for example, on the shared e-scooter services, you might want to limit, for example, the speed or where in certain areas you will allow these vehicles to, in order to make it safer in that sense. But yes, I mean, if you have an increase in these road user groups, then you will have an increase in injuries, and you really have to think about and accommodate for that or compensate for that by trying to limit the consequences of that.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Maria. And I think there are some comments in the chat around, being able to accommodate all the different groups of road users is a big challenge in many of the cities where we see a high rate of road trauma. And this is a question for you then, Kim. If we go back to you sort of talking in your presentation, saying that we need to rearrange and redesign our streets to be able to accommodate all road users and not just cars. Given that in a lot of our cities, the road network is already planned, it's already, built, how easy or how hard is it to retrofit or redesign in order to be able to accommodate new modes of transport or even existing modes of transport like cycling?
I think that is something that is really doable. First of all, if you want to encourage people to use public transportations, we actually don't want to encourage them to drive more, create a space for them and parking and everything, make them easier to drive. We want to limit the usage of private vehicles and then move them into public transportation system. And in order to do so, last mile connection is definitely one of the key in successful public transportation systems. And when you look at a lot of urban roads, a lot of them are congested and everything, but a lot of time they do have a lot of extra space. For example, a lot of cities right now, a lot of country call for the moving lane to be 3.5 meters easily. But those actually can be reduced to 3 meters, and those extra space can be used for public for walking and cycling, and also rearranging the space, create a more efficient bus system. Actually, would also move more people, and also create more mobility option for people and move more people than just private vehicle. We have all seen those pictures that how many people a bus can carry, a metro can carry. But for private vehicle, we use up a lot of space. And the other thing is parking. A lot of places that parking is a really heated topics, but also how we do parking management is also really important in the traffic management as well, like how we use that space efficiently, and then not just for low return usage as parking, how we can use that space for more people to enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's great, Kim. And we sort of saw that during COVID, especially I'm in London at the moment. We say the streets are narrow, but it's all about how do we reallocate the space to make it fair and equitable for everyone. And I saw like cycle lanes and greater pedestrian zones pop up during COVID era to enable that social distancing. So it's really about reimagining the way we can actually facilitate all these different modes. So there is enough space. It's just how we allocate it, isn't it? Fantastic. And with that, can you please join me in saying a very big thank you to our speakers, Mega, Maria, and Kim. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and share with us your presentations. It's been a fantastic discussion, and we'd love to have you come join us again at some point in the future. So with that, Mark, can I please ask you to bring up the last poll question? So just before we wrap up for the day, as usual, it'll be great to hear from you on what you found to be useful for your work in today's session. If you can share with us what your thoughts are from that very last poll question, if you can bring that up, Mark, that would be great. And as usual, all the presentations and recordings from this session will be available on the APRSO Knowledge Hub. So please do visit that and download the presentations that you would like. And with that, just a reminder that the very next session, we can bring up the next slide, please, Mark. Just a reminder, in 2 weeks' time, we will be continuing with this webinar series where we'll have the third session where we'll be looking at the intersect between safety and urban climate sustainability. So it's bound to be another great session. So we really encourage you to come and join us for that next session as well. So with that, I just want to say once again, a very big thank you to our speakers and also to our participants for joining us for this webinar. I wish you all a fantastic week and I hope to see you again in 2 weeks' time. Take care, everyone, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.